think for a second about the digital services you rely on, like from the moment you wake up.
Oh, yeah. There are so many.
Right. You have your banking app, your encrypted email, social media feeds, maybe a fitness tracker logging your resting heart rate while you sleep.
Yeah, the amount of data is just staggering.
And we just constantly click accept on these massive, completely impenetrable privacy policies.
Nobody actually reads those.
Exactly. We are assured over and over by corporate PR that our data is safe because, well, these companies are rigorously audited.
Right, audited in air quotes.
But if you stop and really consider the mechanics of that assurance, it brings up a rather uncomfortable question. I mean, who is checking the math of the people checking the math?
It is the ultimate paradox of the modern digital economy, honestly.
Yeah.
We outsource our trust to these independent auditors, assuming they have, the tools and the integrity to verify these massive tech ecosystems.
Because we certainly can't do it ourselves.
Exactly. But if that auditor misses something or misinterprets a security protocol, the entire illusion of safety just collapses.
Yeah.
It's an infinite regress of trust. We are trusting a system that relies entirely on the unseen competence of a third party.
Which brings us to the core of today's deep dive. We are drawing from a fascinating document titled The Architecture of Trust, Peer Review in Data Auditing.
It's a great read.
It really is.
Yeah.
And rather than just looking at the laws being passed, this document focuses entirely on the quiet, behind-the-scenes framework being built by the auditing profession itself.
To solve that exact paradox we were just talking about.
Right. Okay, so let's unpack this. Our mission today is to explore how they plan to secure the future of digital privacy. But to do that, we actually have to look backward, right? Like at how the financial sector solved this decades ago.
Yeah, because the financial audit profession faced this exact existential crisis long before data was, our primary currency.
Because there's real money on the line there.
Massive amounts of money. When billions of dollars are on the line, you cannot simply take an auditor's word that a corporation's balance sheet is accurate.
Right. You need proof.
The financial sector realized that an auditor's work is, it's essentially a product, and that product requires its own quality control.
Makes sense.
So their solution was the peer review audit. The primary objective was to institutionalize three things: the integrity, the credibility, and the quality of the audit profession itself.
Let's look at the mechanics of that, actually, because on the surface, a peer review sounds like you are just doing the exact same audit twice.
Which would be a nightmare.
Yeah. It sounds incredibly inefficient for everyone involved.
Right, but a peer review is fundamentally not a second audit.
Okay.
That distinction is the linchpin of the entire system. A peer review is an independent evaluation of an auditor's work.
Their work specifically.
Yes, conducted by qualified professionals who had, zero involvement in the original engagement.
Oh, I see.
These experienced reviewers do not go back to the client company and start asking for receipts all over again.
Because that would be doing the audit twice.
Exactly. Instead, they go into the office of the original auditor. They examine the underlying machinery of the audit process itself.
Wait, what does that look like in practice?
Well, they are looking at the methodology. They review the working papers, the evidence collection procedures, the documentation practices, even the logical steps the auditor took to reach their final reporting conclusions.
So they aren't looking at the company's finances at all. They are basically evaluating the magnifying glass the first auditor used to look at those finances.
That is the perfect way to visualize it, yes.
Wow.
They are determining whether the audit process met the expected standards of professional diligence. The objective is never, and I mean never, to substitute the judgment of the original auditor.
Right, so they're not double-guessing the results.
No, the peer reviewer isn't coming in to say, I would have flagged this specific travel expense.
Yeah.
They are just there to assess whether the original auditor followed accepted standards and regulatory requirements when they originally reviewed that expense.
It makes me think of a restaurant health inspection.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Right. Because when a health inspector walks into the kitchen of, say, a Michelin star restaurant, they are not there to taste the chef's final dish.
No, they don't care about the taste.
They don't care if the soup is undersalted or if the plating is uninspired, because that would be, substituting judgment.
The inspector is completely indifferent to the culinary artistry. They are focused entirely on the environment that produced the meal.
Exactly. The inspector is checking the kitchen's preparation processes.
Right.
They're looking to see if the raw poultry is stored on the bottom shelf, away from the vegetable.
Checking the cross-contamination.
Right, checking the temperature logs on the walk-in freezer. They want to see the sanitization schedules for the cutting boards.
Yeah, the boring stuff.
But if the methodology of the kitchen is sound, and those safety protocols are strictly followed, you can trust that the food coming out of that kitchen is safe to eat.
Even if the inspector never actually tastes a single bite of it.
Exactly.
Well, the working papers of an independent auditor are basically the temperature logs of that walk-in freezer.
Oh, I love that.
The peer reviewer is just verifying that the environment was rigorous. And when we take that concept of checking the methodology and apply it to the digital ecosystem...
This is where it gets really interesting for you and me.
Right. We find ourselves looking at a massive shift in how data privacy is going to be handled going forward. This is where the Digital Personal Data Protection Act enters the picture.
The DPDPA.
Yes, the DPDPA.
The stakes with the DPDPA are just enormous. We are moving away from, the Wild West of data collection.
Where they just took everything.
Right, where companies could essentially hoard whatever personal information they wanted into an era of strict accountability.
In theory, anyway.
Right, in theory.
Yeah.
Because this act mandates that companies must protect personal data and be totally transparent about its use. But legislation is just words on a page without a way to actually measure compliance.
Which is always the tricky part.
Exactly. And that is where the FDPPI framework comes in.
Right. The Foundation of Data Protection Professionals in India, or FDPPI.
Right.
They are developing the operational framework for these DPDPA compliance audits.
Okay.
They are essentially taking that historical blueprint of financial peer review and embedding it directly into the digital frontier.
So how does that work?
Under their framework, audit firms go through a strict process to be recognized as certified audit firms.
Okay.
These certified firms are the ones going into the tech companies, the hospitals, the financial institutions to evaluate how personal data is actually being handled.
And the output of that audit isn't just a basic pass or fail.
No, it's much more detailed.
The FDPPI framework actually requires the auditor to submit something called a data trust score report, along with all the related audit records. It's essentially a quantifiable metric of how trustworthy a company is with your data.
Exactly. And those records and the resulting data trust score are then retained by the FDPPI for quality assurance purposes.
Got it.
But the framework includes this really fascinating feedback loop.
Oh.
FDPPI doesn't just take the auditor's word for it. The auditee, the company that just had its data practices heavily scrutinized, is actively encouraged to provide feedback regarding the audit engagement itself.
Okay.
So FDPPI gathers inputs from both sides of the table.
Wait, I see a glaring issue with this mechanism right away.
Oh, yeah.
This sounds like a Yelp review system for regulatory compliance.
That's a funny way to put it.
Think about it. If I am the CEO of a tech startup, and this auditor comes into my servers, finds a bunch of vulnerabilities, and slaps my company with a terrible data trust score,
your business takes a huge hit.
my business could suffer immediately. What is stopping me from weaponizing this feedback system? I could just leave scathing, spiteful feedback about the auditor to totally discredit their findings.
Well, that is the natural human reaction to scrutiny, to be honest.
Totally.
And it is exactly why the peer review mechanism is the backbone of this entire framework.
Oh, how so?
If an auditee submits complaints, or if the inputs from the auditor and the auditee show massive inconsistencies, FDPPI doesn't just arbitrarily pick a side.
Oh.
That friction actually triggers the peer review process, and this is where we have to completely reframe how we view an audit.
Okay, reframe it how?
A peer review is not a disciplinary hearing for the auditor. It is not a punishment triggered by a disgruntled client.
It's an insurance policy for the auditor.
Precisely. If a spiteful tech company tries to tank an auditor's reputation because of a low data trust score, the independent peer reviewer comes in and looks at the auditor's methodology.
Ah, they check the walk-in freezer logs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If the auditor's working papers are flawless, if their sampling of the data architecture was rigorous, and their conclusions are supported by the evidence...
The peer review validates the auditor's work.
Yes. It provides an objective, independent defense against unfair criticism. The source material explicitly states that FDPPI does not seek to substitute its judgment for the auditors, nor does it interfere with their professional independence.
So, by investigating the methodology, the peer review basically neutralizes the emotion of the disgruntled client.
That's it, exactly.
It clarifies the inconsistencies so that the rest of the market can actually rely on that data trust score. It preserves the credibility of the entire ecosystem.
The system really only functions if the friction between auditor and auditee can be resolved objectively.
Right.
But setting up this delicate system of checks and balances brings us to a significant structural hurdle.
There's always a hurdle.
FDPPI can recommend a peer review, but who actually has the authority to force an auditor to hand over their working papers to an outside party?
Right, because nobody wants to share their internal notes.
Exactly.
This is where the architecture of trust gets really complicated, and it introduces a new entity, the Association of Independent Data Auditors of India, or ADAI.
Yes, ADAI.
The source document details how the ADAI is developing a comprehensive code of ethics for independent data auditors.
And this is huge.
It is. The peer review concept is proposed as a foundational pillar of this ethical code. It is meant to be baked into the ethical commitments that auditors undertake,
Right.
and even written directly into the engagement agreements between the auditing firms and their corporate clients.
But the twist here is explicitly laid out in the text.
Which is?
At present, these remain entirely voluntary professional standards.
Wait, really?
Yeah, neither the FDPPI nor the ADI possesses the statutory authority to force an auditor to submit to a peer review. There is no law mandating this ethical obligation.
Okay, a voluntary ethical standard sounds incredibly fragile.
It does sound that way.
I mean, we just spent all this time outlining how this rigorous peer review process is the ultimate defense against compromised data audits.
Right.
If neither of these governing bodies has the legal teeth to enforce it, isn't this just a polite suggestion?
Well,
Why would any auditing firm voluntarily invite outside scrutiny? Like, essentially paying someone to grade their homework and potentially expose their flaws if the law doesn't compel them to do it.
if we view this purely through a legal lens, it absolutely seems fragile. But if we look at the market economics of trust, it becomes an incredibly powerful mechanism.
The market economics.
Yeah, in emerging markets, especially those dealing with intangible assets like data privacy trust, is a literal currency.
That's true.
The effectiveness of these standards relies heavily on the willingness of auditors to embrace them, because doing so creates a massive competitive advantage.
Oh, I see. You're saying the free market is going to enforce the standard better than a statutory law could.
The market will ruthlessly weed out the firms that refuse the standard. Just imagine two data auditing firms competing for a contract with a massive multinational healthcare provider.
Great, high stakes.
Very high stakes. The healthcare provider knows that if their data practices are breached, they face catastrophic financial and reputational ruin.
So they need a data trust score that is bulletproof.
Exactly. So Auditor A offers a standard compliance check, but Auditor B offers the same check, but points out that their methodology is voluntarily subjected to independent peer review under the ADI Code of Ethics.
Oh, Auditor B is signaling to the market that their math is verifiable.
Yes.
And more importantly, the source noted that this voluntary standard is meant to be incorporated into the engagement agreements.
That's the key.
So the moment Auditor B signs that contract with the healthcare provider, the voluntary ethical standard transforms into a legally binding contractual one.
Yes. The auditor is legally committing to the client that their work is subject to outside quality control.
That is brilliant.
It builds a market reputation of absolute, unassailable trustworthiness. The healthcare provider is going to choose Auditor B every single time, even if they cost more.
Because the verified data trust score provides a shield of credibility that Auditor A simply cannot offer.
Right.
The voluntary nature of the standard actually makes it more powerful. It separates the auditors who are just checking boxes from the auditors who are genuinely committed to rigor.
Precisely. The market demands trust, and the voluntary standard provides the proof of that trust.
This dynamic brings us to the philosophical core of the source material.
It's my favorite part of the document.
Mine too. Because we are operating in a space where external regulation and statutory authority are currently limited, and quite frankly, will always struggle to keep pace with technological advancement.
Law is notoriously slow.
Extremely slow. Because of that reality, the survival and the strength of the data auditing profession cannot be imposed from the outside.
Right, the integrity has to come from within the practitioners themselves.
The source discusses this at length. The long-term strength of any profession depends not merely on external mandates, but on internal values.
Yeah, ethical conduct is really only meaningful when it is voluntarily adopted and consistently practiced.
Because if you only do the right thing when someone is pointing a regulatory gun at your head, That isn't ethics.
No, that's just risk management.
Exactly.
FDPPI isn't just asking these impaneled auditors to comply with a technical checklist. They are urging them to embrace peer review, to cultivate an entirely new culture within the profession.
A culture.
Yes, a culture rooted in integrity, transparency, accountability, and the desire for continuous improvement.
It is the exact difference between how you behave when you know you are being watched versus how you behave when you are completely alone.
That's a great way to put it.
Think about driving down a highway. You might suddenly hit the brakes and drive the exact speed limit purely because your navigation app warned you there was a traffic enforcement camera a mile ahead.
We all do that.
Right. But that is compliance, driven by the fear of a penalty. Driving at a safe speed because you genuinely value human life, because you understand that your actions impact the safety of your community. That is culture.
Huge difference.
One is an external forcing function. The other is a core part of who you are.
The text introduces a concept for this internal culture that is quite profound, actually. They call it inner engineering.
Inner engineering.
Yeah. The effectiveness of an independent data auditor is not going to be determined solely by their technical competence.
Sure.
I mean, the ability to read server architecture, understand encryption protocols, or evaluate data flows, that is merely the baseline requirement.
Table stakes.
Exactly. True effectiveness is determined by their commitment to ethical self-governance.
Inner engineering. It goes far beyond getting the right training or, displaying a certification on your office wall. It is an alignment of personal morality with professional duty.
The source explicitly states that the profession requires an inner engineering that aligns an auditor's daily conduct with the much larger objective of building trust in the broader digital ecosystem.
Yeah.
A profession does not earn the public's trust simply by pointing to a government regulation. It earns trust through the willingness of its members to hold themselves accountable to standards that are significantly higher than those imposed by law.
Holding yourself to a standard higher than the law requires. That is a massive operational philosophy.
It really is.
The law is just the floor. Inner engineering is the ceiling.
And that ceiling is the bedrock of true professional trust. It is what separates a technician from a trusted guardian.
Wow. This has been an incredibly revealing journey through the invisible infrastructure that protects our digital lives.
It really makes you see things differently.
It does. We started by looking at the old-school financial blueprint of peer reviews, the health inspectors evaluating the methodology of the accounting world.
Right.
Then we saw how that critical mechanism is being ported over into the digital age through the FDPPI framework to create verifiable data trust scores. We examined the surprising reality that the ADI's ethical code is entirely voluntary, and how the market economics of trust transform that voluntary standard into a powerful competitive advantage.
And we finally arrived at the ultimate defense mechanism for our personal data.
The concept of inner engineering.
It entirely changes the perspective on what keeps the digital economy functioning.
It really does.
So, the next time you download a new platform or quickly agree to a convoluted privacy policy, remember that the true safeguard isn't necessarily the legislation passed in your capital.
Right.
Behind the scenes, there is a complex architecture of trust being built by professionals who realize that the only way to secure the system is to aggressively audit their own methodologies.
And that leaves us with a critical thought to consider as we watch this space evolve.
Yeah.
We live in a reality where technology advances at light speed while legislative bodies move at a crawl.
Very true.
We've established that the most trustworthy professionals are the ones who voluntarily hold themselves to standards higher than the law. But what happens when the evolution of technology, things like autonomous AI agents or decentralized data networks, outpaces our legal systems entirely?
Scary thought.
In a future where the law simply cannot comprehend or keep up with modern data practices, will a company's privately audited data trust score and the deeply rooted inner engineering of its auditors become more vital to your safety than the actual legal privacy regulations of your own country?
Something to think about.
Because when the rules inevitably fall behind, that internal culture of self-governance might be the only thing left checking the math, the people checking the math.